And I said to Mother, "But Mother, I don't know anything about combining words and music." And Mother said to me, "No, no, you must go far above words and bring down the pure music." 20 years, 30 years, I studied all these different composers, especially choral music, but all music. And I aspired and attempted to catch something of the new music in what they were bringing down. But one day I received a second adesh. I received many adeshes from Mother. For example, to build the gardens of the Matrimandir, which I'm doing now. But the second adesh was interesting because it told me that it had to be Om. Only Om. And Mother wrote that Om is the voice of the Lord. Even the signature Om, Mother said, is the handwriting of the Lord. This was not just a revelation to me, but the direction that the new music would have to take. It would have to be a music that was transcendent. It would have to be a music that included all souls and had the power of transformation. And we now have Om choirs twice a week, once at Savitri Bhavan and once in the ashram school. And the new music descends. But how does it descend? This is the question. It cannot descend when the ego is dominant. So I ask each soul, open your consciousness, become an instrument, and allow the divine presence to sing through you. And it does. And there are so many experiences I could share with you of people who have seen Sri Aurobindo and Mother in the midst of the Om choir. Experiences that I find people weeping when they leave or they're healed of some problem or other. So the most important thing is that we are one soul, one body. We are not a disparate group of souls. We are a sacred body. And when we aspire for the Om to come down through the divine presence, it may come down in many ways. It may come down in one tone. It may come down in multitudinous tones and voices, because we all have many tones in our bodies. Many tones, from deep tones to very high tones. And we allow the divine presence to sing on all of those tones. So today, we have only 15 minutes or so, but I would like us to feel this oneness, this divine love that is embracing us all, this sacred grace of the divine that makes possible the descent of a new music. When I begin the Om choirs, I ask for a note, and anyone can give me that note. All of us will be there exactly at that moment and allow the music to flow down. After the first Om and subsequent Oms, there are a few moments of silence. And then I ask someone to quote a few lines from Savitri, because Savitri lifts us higher and higher, and it informs us with the mantra. A tone, a few lines from Savitri. Anyone.
The Spirit's ultimate energy is hers. She is the golden bread, the wonderful fire.
The luminous heart
Of the
unknown is she, the power of silence in the depths of God.
She is the force,
The inevitable word, the magnet of our difficult ascent, the sun from which we kindle all our suns, the light that leans from the unrealized vast, the joy that beckons from the impossible.
the nights of all that never yet came down. All nature dumbly calls to her alone,
To heal with her feet
the
aching throb of life,
and break the seals and the dim soul of man, and
kindle her fire
in the
in
low
those
heart
heart
of
things.
things.
All here shall one day be her.
All here shall be one day her sweetness and home.
All contraries prepare her harmony.
Towards her our knowledge climbs, our faith and growth. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell. Her class
note. If the chamber's door is even a little ajar, what then can hinder God from stealing in? Or who forbid his kiss on the sleeping soul? Last Om. A note.
It's on. It's on. Yeah. Thank you for that, Narad. We, yes, it's going to be three of them. So maybe we keep to the sides. Dr. Joy, so you're going to be referring to the presentation and talking, right? As that's how it's going to be, right? So we can have you here, and then we have Gabby and Jeslu on the other two. Is that an okay? Yeah, okay. So, and Jeff. Oh, so we need three chairs. So should we put that long one? Just give us a couple of seconds. We'll just get this arranged. That's okay. There's this one. Yeah. Yeah. I thought I was on your way. Okay. So, stepping into the second last session of the day, that's called as the Designing a More Conscious Future. A radical growth in consciousness among a significant number of people will affect the global community and transform every aspect of our collective lives, whether it's architecture, social organization, economic, education, government, whatever that may name it. There are small scale experiments happening in some of these areas. But what are the signs that a deeper transformation is already underway? Auroville itself is meant to be a pioneer and an example of a new way of social organization and of a living based on a radically new consciousness. So, projecting into the future, what would these new societies look like? So, it's a conversation between Professor Joy Sain, Chairperson, Center of Excellence for the Indian Knowledge Systems, IIT Kharagpur, India, Jeff Gunnug, no, Managing Director of the Pro Social World, you heard him on day one, Ms. Jeslu Celine Jacob, Prime Minister Research Fellow Scholar, facilitated by Gabby. So welcoming all four of them onto the dais. Professor Joy, Jeff, Ms. Jeslu Celine Jacob, and our Gabby. Gabby is part of the International Advisory Committee for Auroville. You're on.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to keep that space that Narad put us into, but onwards to our musings and explorations. I was very fortunate to be part of a workshop on Saturday where one of the participants reminded us of the foresight and the courage that India had to provide a place, a piece of land for, a place for that aspires for humanity, a place that belongs to no one, a place that belongs to humanity. Equally, I feel that we need to acknowledge and honor the people who, for the last 55 years, put that aspiration into practice in so many different ways. We've seen the barren wasteland that Auroville was, and there's been a physical transformation. But bringing together people from so many different backgrounds, countries, languages, in a very courageous way to try something new for the benefit of humanity cannot be underestimated. Over the last few days, we've explored the interconnectedness of everything, science and spirituality, the individual, the collective, just to name a few. But it all creates this web of life, so wherever you pull the web, it affects everything else. Not to forget the interconnectedness of everything. And I think becoming part of a conscious community, we're not always chosen because we're perfect. Sometimes we're chosen because we bring an opportunity for growth or transformation. And the mother said, I'll just quote from the mother, that the achievement is indeed far from perfect. It is progressive. Little by little, we advance to our goal. So I kind of feel that, something that is so precious and so important to humanity and the future of humanity, I feel like, how do we protect that? How do we support that? How do we nurture that so that it can evolve to its full potential? And what are the steps and the stages and the actions, literally the material actions that show the way to that realization of the next stage in evolution? So I was lucky enough to have a lovely informal interaction with Joy and Jeff earlier on, and I wish it was still on that informal platform because it was very conducive. But we've agreed I'll hand over to Professor Joy to start with the exploration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's really an honor and an immense pleasure to share this place. It's like a temple of progression, as Gaby says it. We are not moving from falsehood to truth, but we are moving from lesser truth to greater truth. There is no black and white in this universe. It's all in gray scales. Yeah. So everybody has a chance. Every system of thought has a place, a freedom to participate. We don't have the right to criticize or look down upon any other system. Instead, what we need to do is to share some of the good things which exist in that system which I don't have, my system does not. So it is with this background, Sri Aurobindo and the mother came to this universe. It is with this background, all the sages had come and shall be coming to this universe. Because in India and in humanity as a whole, the word exclusion does not find a place. It's always inclusive. There's no place for exclusion. So it's not an either-or paradigm. It's not a day and night paradigm, but it's the 24 hours of the day becoming night and the night becoming day. We had wonderful conversations under the tree, over the table, below the shelf, when the birds were chirping and the butterfly was moving in the green and the sun was becoming from dawn to noon, Gayatri was becoming Savitri. So that's the whole beauty. Yeah. So I lost my voice almost when I was hearing Naradji spelling out Om, and the whole room became a concerto, as if Zubin Mehta was conducting the London Symphony Orchestra. And I think it was much more than that. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to share some thoughts here, because we come from academia. This is Jeslu, one of our scholars, and she's doing wonderful work. She pitches in everything that I do, we do. So it's one team. There's nothing like somebody has done it and somebody else is following it. We just work as a team. We learn from each other. That's the spirit. So what happens in IIT or in MIT or in Harvard or in the University of Tokyo, what happens? We encounter brilliant minds, young minds, youngsters, and many of them, they don't get an opportunity to come to a summit like this. Yeah. So they become isolated clusters, and so we have to carve out ways and means to explain a few conviction-driven passages or narratives or visuals which becomes evident to their beautiful minds. That's what I've learned progressively, in the words of KB, in the last 22 years of teaching, maybe a little more than that, and about 11 years of industrial experience. So the two sides, not an either-or, has given me some strength to understand the universe and the planet as a whole, and also different countries. I'll move on because we don't have much time, and Gaby said she's going to be a German as far as time is concerned, but she's going to be a South African as far as music is concerned, and she's going to be Irish as far as her heart is concerned. So we're going to have all three of that in one session. So, and that's what a mother has. I mean, that's the quality of a mother. She has all the three properties, a German Mahakali, a South African Mahasaraswati, and an Irish Mahalakshmi, very supple, very soft. Yeah. And you did a combination of all the three things. I mean, that's completeness, Purna Yoga. So let's move on. So this is, this movie. I mean, it has really impacted our mind. So that boy in that forest in Pandora, the universe which is non-known to us, was about to be killed, and then there were signs. And the people of that planet actually came to know that there's something special about this boy. I think everybody in this room has seen this movie. It's Avatar by James Cameron. This is from Avatar 1. It's also there in Avatar 2. It's not a question of using an Indian word in the movie, but it's a whole parameter of actually using something which is universal. It was there, it is there, and it shall be there. That's Sanatana. It's eternal. And every religion belongs to that truth. And every religion has a right. Every science has a right. And I think everything else also have their right. So what are the signs that a deeper transformation is already underway? So Gaby gave us that wonderful word today, which is progressive, and Jeff gave me another wonderful word yesterday, which is cooperation, and that's going to be in his talk. So what I'm going to show you, the next 3-4 slides, I'm going to move very quickly, and if there are questions, we can come back to this, provided we have the time. About 3-4 slides, about a big change, a big transformation that's happening to the planetary system, to humanity as a whole right now. And then about 12 slides on a time scale, which are time scaled. They're scalable and they are dynamic, they're evolving over time. Starting from a very important year, which is 1893, that's at Chicago, the City Beautiful movement. So let's move on. So as I said, the science that we had the last 200 to 300 years after the Renaissance or the Industrial Revolution was great. These are all great people, great people. I mean, you have Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and many more. And they've really, really contributed to the progress of humanity on the one hand. On the other hand, what has happened, the progress of science in the last 300 years has reduced us to certain targets and objective. So we don't see, in the words of KB, the big picture. We forget, so we reduce. And there are a lot of important books and new literature which are available all over the globe right now. One book which really influenced me when I was a student in the US was The Turning Point by Professor Fritjof Capra from the University of Berkeley, California. So he talked about a change which is already happening in this world. And that change is to design a more conscious future, which is the whole episteme. Now, this is a beautiful sutra or a sloka from the Gita, which goes like Urdhva Moolam. So there is a fantastic tree of wisdom where the roots are above and the branches are coming down. And the more they come down to the lower plane, the grosser and the more manifest they are. And the more you go to the roots, the subtler and the more spiritual they are. So when you're shuttling between the two, you're actually moving between materialism on the one hand and spiritualism in the one hand. The beauty of this sutra is that it combines both as a single body of truth. So in the words of Capra, he says the mystics understand the roots of the tree, but not its branches. Scientists understand the branches and not its roots. Science does not need mysticism or religion, whatever you may say, and mysticism does not need science. But humanity needs both. Humanity needs both. Not only both, but everything that's in between also. It needs the whole ladder. So this is the whole ladder. So on the one hand, you're going back to the origin. The Ganga, the river, is going back to the Himalayas. And on the other hand, the river is coming down to the ocean. It's coming to the ocean. So these are like the two states of the river. And the river is perennially going round and round because it's getting the ice from the mountains and the clouds are going back to the mountains again. So the life cycle of the river is the life cycle of the cosmos, is the life cycle of the individual, is the life cycle of the macrocosm. So there's a beautiful thing which is evident in our shastras, in our scriptures. And the fantastic thing which is happening right now, what was evident and is still evident in the slokas or in the sutras of Indian spirituality, I think in all spirituality of the world in some way or the other, whether it's Christianity or Mayan or shamanistic or Shintoism or Tibetan Buddhism, I think it's all there, is the connection between the two ends, the connection, the reverberation, the resonance between the highest and the lowest. And Indian spirituality calls that chanda. Chanda yasya pranani yastam vedasha vedavid. So I'm going to be a bit simple here. So chanda means the resonance between the highest and the lowest. The person, if it's Gaby or if it's Jeff who knows the chanda, to link the highest and the lowest, he is a Vedabit. He is the saint. He is the Sant. He is Saint John. He is Swami Vivekananda. He is Sri Aurobindo. And he is the Buddha. And he is all the Buddhas who are born and who shall be born in the destiny of humankind. So let's move on. So to make it simple, in science, we normally see the motion which is going up and down. So that's reductionism. But this is a diagram that comes from the Tao of Physics. Yeah, from the Tao of Physics. So something which is actually going up and down, science believes in that. You put something and you get something. You put something and you get something. That's linear. That's reductionism. But what is linear is actually a projection of a cycle which is going down. So when the dot in the cycle is going up, the linear thing is going up. When the dot is coming down, the linear thing is coming down. So what we see as reduced truths is actually a projection of a cyclic truth. And we see that in the form of a tree, a network, or a dendrogram. And we also see that in the form of the distribution of information and data, what we call patterns. So this is actually the beautiful contribution that comes from Sri Aurobindo, his famous contribution to humanity. I think one of the greatest contribution, which is his entire ladder, which he calls the hierarchy of mind. And great people like Jung, Wilber, Andrew Cohen, Stanislav Grof, and others convert it to a beautiful scientific paradigm. But there's no one else who comes as close to Maslow, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow and Aurobindo together provides the framework of the totality of humanity. So this was beautifully being explained just in the session prior to lunch. The Panchakosha. So when we are actually going in, we are actually going up. So when we are going inside the circle, we are actually going up the pyramid. It's pure geometry. So if you talk pyramidically, then we are having a concept of a God above. But if you're talking cyclically, you have the concept of the God within. So the idea of the God above is the idea or the realization of the God within. So today, science, geometry of forms, iconography, symbol has progressed so much that the most ancient can be proved by the most modern. So the West and the East are getting married. That's a beautiful turning point. We need the best of the two worlds. So it's like an amplitude. So at the lowest level, the pranamaya kosha and the annamaya kosha, the vital and the physical, there's a huge amplitude. As we go up, the amplitude or the distance between the two decreases. So that's the swinging pendulum. So that's the hierarchy of needs. And there is a point when the two merges. The pranamaya kosha is in sync. The vital is in sync with the annamaya kosha, which is the physical. And the manomaya kosha, which is the mind, becomes more and more evident. And there is a point when the two merges and pran becomes akasha, the vital becomes the physical. And in Vedanta, we call it chidakasha. I mean, the consciousness itself is space. Space is consciousness. So this is a change, a paradigm that is emerging. And this slide is actually the basis of all that follows in the next 10 or 15 slides. So I'm going to pitch up time because I think the point has been made. So 12 beautiful things happened in the last 130 years of human history. 1893, when Swami Vivekananda reached Chicago and his speech made a global impact. The beauty of that conference or that gathering was that more than the people of religion, the men of science or the women of science flocked around him. And there are people like Hermann Helmholtz, the third one, the father of modern electricity, which is Lord Kelvin, and the man who changed the course of the next 100 years, that's Nikola Tesla. So Tesla and Swami Vivekananda interacted superbly for the next 15 to 18 days. And Tesla was just providing the alternating current. And after having a long discussion with Vivekananda, Tesla was so excited to say that what you talk about the equivalence between the prana and the akasha, the vital and the physical, is the force and the matter in modern physics. So I can prove your things mathematically. That's what Tesla said. And I can also prove something. Yeah. Thank you. So I can prove those things mathematically, and the distribution of the prana, which is the vital across the akasha, will not need any medium anymore. So about 130 years back, Tesla and Vivekananda were talking about wireless communication, which today is known as the WWW, the World Wide Web. And Tesla is like one of the fathers of that. I'm moving a little fast because we don't have much time, and Gevi is going to be a Mahakali, and German. Yeah, so I'll move very fast. So this is evident in Shankhya, which is a very detailed thing, and this was just explained prior to lunch. With the Panchabhuta, the Pancha Tanmatra is also crunching. So the prana and the akasha is coming together, and that is the whole foundation of the yoga. That is the whole foundation of the yoga. And that is explained by the brilliance, that's Sri Aurobindo on the one hand, and Abraham Maslow on the other hand. And if you just get them together, you explain all the sciences and all the spirituality in this world. That's what we are doing in IIT Kharagpur in a very small way. We have just started. Yeah. So the second progression that happened was in 1929, when Tagore was famous as a Nobel laureate, and a German, a scientist, a wonderful man, Werner Heisenberg, a Nobel laureate, came all the way to Calcutta, to meet Tagore. And he simply asked a question that how come you have described the same things without knowing any machine or mathematics, the things that we are trying to pursue in quantum mechanics. You have just written poetry, but you have said within the finite is the infinite, within the microcosm is the macrocosm. So this dialogue is actually a part of a third book by Capra, which is the Uncommon Wisdom. The Uncommon Wisdom. So if you read the first chapter of the book, a portion of the dialogue, there's a cow saying yes and yes and yes. Yeah, that's avang manasa gocharam, go. So the cow is only not the cow, but it's also light. It's also light. The ray cows of the universe. Yeah. So this is a secret of the Vedas by Sri Aurobindo. So at the material level is a cow. At the spiritual level is a ray, the light of the sunlit path. So this is a beautiful thing that happened between the two great minds, and the discussion became so important. And I think Gaby will love this because that's her favorite. Albert Einstein invited Tagore to his house in Berlin, and they had a discussion on the two views of the universe. One is objective, which is not dependent on the consciousness. The other is dependent on consciousness. And Tagore said there is just one view which is dependent on the consciousness, because if I don't say that the emerald is green, then who is going to say the emerald is actually green? So you need a human consciousness to say that the emerald is green. In Bengali we say, Amar chetonai panna holo shobuj. In my consciousness, the emerald is green. Yeah. So this is anthropic consciousness. So man becomes the middle tier, in the words of Sri Aurobindo, where evolution gets the first chance to question back on the universe. Atha Brahma Jigasha. And what is the relationship between the two? And then evolution starts, and the support comes as the involution from above. So that's the dialogue between the two. And this really expanded between many people. And this is about the conscious future, the green environment. And today it has become a huge principle, which is the Gaia's hypothesis, James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis. So it started from Whitehead, Norbert Wiener, Gregory Bateson, and Margaret Beard. That's the fourth progression. This happened in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. So progression went on. What's that? Yeah. What's that? Maybe. Can you change from here? From there? What's this? Oh, okay. You had animation. Yeah. Yeah, just play the whole slide. Yo, this was all animation. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this is a slide designed by Jeslu. So that takes us to the understanding of deep ecology. Yeah, I think we don't have time much for that.
Yeah,
That takes us to, yeah, just give me 5 more minutes. Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, yeah. So next slide. So that takes us to the next slide. Yeah, yeah. So now I think, yeah. So that takes us to the huge change, the acceptance of Indian iconography, which is the Natarajan, the dance of Shiva. It came on the Tao of Physics. It came on Ilya Prigogine, 1977 Nobel Prize in Nanochemistry on his book. And it finally went to CERN in Switzerland in 2004, where all the physicists accepted. So that led to the sixth light, which is the development of the work by Charles Townes, who worked on the connections between molecular biology and the inclusion of consciousness. That takes us to Sri Aurobindo and Pierre Chardin, the teleologist. So I think I'm addressing a very enlightened crowd. I did not expand on this. That takes us to a seventh light, which is the work by Nobel laureate Richard Ernst. And he expanded on iconography as a tool of meditation and an incorporation of symbols in science itself, which takes us to the eighth light, which is Professor Lee Hartwell, and the whole inclusion of human consciousness in what we call purgation, therapeutics, and catharsis. And the whole inclusion of morality, ethics, and culture as an intermediary between materialism and spiritualism. We cannot jump from the material to the spiritual without the moral, the ethical, and the cultural. So that was actually pointed out. So that led to the foundation of yoga, which is a big system all over. And I think many of you know, Mother actually got interested in India after reading the book by Swami Vivekananda, which was the Raj Yoga. And then she met Sri Aurobindo. And that took us to one of the greatest works, which is by Robert Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, which is known as the orchestrated objective reduction, where Penrose says that the entire objective world, your world, my world, his world, is orchestrated like an orchestra, and it's reduced to a single harmony, like the Om choir, So this is actually described in the Emperor's New Mind. So we did this because the youngsters, the students, they want evidence, what exactly has happened. I mean, if we straight talk about meditation to them, they probably not accept my logic and my theme. So that really changed the last two slides. That really changed, and it's almost like a turning point when the Surya and the Chandranari, the circadian rhythm of the biological clock inside the human body, connected with the universe, actually fetched a Nobel Prize, 2017, by Jeffrey Hall and this entire team. This is a big change where science has become spiritual, and spirituality as the mother has embraced the son and the daughter, the two sciences, the physical and the biological sciences. Almost towards the end, and this is last year, the big blow, and this is quantum physics. This is Alan Aspect, who has proved through machines and calculations that the reality that we see at present is a combination of the backward and the forward linkage in time itself. So this is the foundation of quantum physics. So present is actually a past and the future. So when I am talking to Gaby, I inherit all the knowledge that she had from the past, and what she's going to do in the next 20 seconds, that's future. Yeah, she's going to stop me. So the final output is a combination of two. So anything that we see in present is a combination of past and future. So this is the beautiful change that has come to science, which is a resonance of Indian spirituality. We are not trying to say that Indian spirituality had all the sciences. We are not trying to say that Western sciences had everything there. What we are trying to say is that what this person said, the other person is also saying the same thing. Because humanity is much bigger and much more important than this person and the other person. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. So that's the change that's coming. So this is the postmodern science. So exclusive has become inclusive, red, has become green, linear is becoming non-linear, and non-linear is becoming cyclic, and reductionist is becoming micro, quantum, or macro, relativistic, and isolated paradigms is becoming co-evolutionary, so that the evolution of the microcosm is built on the evolution of the macrocosm. So in summary, this is what is happening. There's a new age change that is happening, and a finishing slide, a completion slide delineated by Jeslu, the paradigm expansion to a large approach and a holistic system. So Auroville becomes perhaps one of the biggest centers of change, where all the best things in the world, the East and the West, all the wonderful things in the world, whether it's spiritual and science, are probably coming together. And it's no more a hierarchy, it's a holarchy, a whole, which contains all the parts. It's just not a sum of its parts. It's an integration of all the parts. So it's integral yoga. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to you, Jeff.
Thank you for that. What I'd like to share is what I'm witnessing that is evidence that a significant shift is underway. One is that there seems to be a speeding up of synchronicity, serendipity, meaningful coincidences. Sure, it's happening. You know, it can't just be me. It's happening everywhere. And it's worth noticing that it's happening, and worth noticing that it's happening at an increased pace. Because that's about something. It's about something that's time has come. It's about, I believe, that we're getting help. I call it stepping on an escalator of grace. And every step that we take, it's like the divine is taking a step or two for us, so it's going quicker. But it also requires paying attention. Not making too much of it, not making too little of it, seeing the connections and having some degree of discernment where the meaningful connections are, and the timing of when these connections are optimal to actually manifest something, some kind of action in the world. And it seems as if the pandemic has had an impact, is shifting consciousness. It's we never know what some of the catalysts are going to be. But one of the things that I've noticed is really three things. One is that humanity has an increased sense as a whole of how fragile we are, and how fragile the whole system is. And secondly, how interconnected we are. We were all having a very similar experience at the same time, which hasn't happened before. And not like it has happened because of communications and technology. And then the third thing, and maybe the most important and profound thing, is an increased sense of the need for cooperation. You know, we can't do this alone. So the question is how? And one of the things that I'm deeply involved with Pro-Social World is to facilitate a means for cooperation at scale. So it's also interesting to me to note that the problem and the solution are co-arising simultaneously. The need that we need to begin to cooperate on the local level, but ultimately on the collective level, is right there. And we have every need to do it now. The stakes have never been higher. Also, what we're witnessing, what I'm witnessing with Pro-Social World and the work that we're doing, because it's a young organization, a couple years old, but no advertising, no marketing, but people are finding us, organizations are finding us with great interest. And you can't make that happen, but you wish it to happen. And they're very diverse. It's not like one area. So another thing that's very optimistic, a sense that there's some kind of a sea change at work here, is that recently one of the world's leading, most respected economists, an organizer of the G20 summit, has taken interest in this work because his sense is, and there's a growing sense, that the current economic model, it's not sustainable. But it's also not grounded in science. Economics isn't science. But if it was going to be grounded in science, and it probably should, cultural evolution would probably be a good place, as well as integral spirituality that has an emphasis on the whole, the well-being of the whole, which it isn't now, clearly. And there are some really interesting and exciting and inspiring things happen in technology. We're seeing organizations, technical organizations, design, architecture, engineering, from lots of different areas that are beginning to look at this through the same kind of lens that we're looking at this through, of how do we design and architect technology that facilitates cooperation and well-being and transformation. And if you want systems and technology to do that, you have to design for it. It just doesn't happen organically. It has to be intended. But for it to be intended, to know how to do it and do it with wisdom and insight, requires training, requires practice, requires a depth of being. And so there's a lot of tech visionaries, tech organizations, that some of which have been getting a very similar download for a decade. And so there's infrastructure that is already being built. So it's not we have to wait and build it and they will come. There's a lot that's happening already. And another very inspiring and hopeful thing is that they're finding each other. Groups, organizations are finding each other in very meaningful ways, with a new emphasis toward cooperation and doing something that has impact. It's not enough to connect anymore. Connecting is wonderful. Events like these are wonderful, but they must produce some type of action now. And this event at this time is another sign, what's happening here. And the evidence of it will show itself in the impact that comes out of it. And I think that one of the things that would be really valuable if this does become, a perpetual thing, is if we bring our cliff notes back into how these relationships manifested into what kind of action next time, and share it. There are things that are happening on the level of technology that very few people see, because it's under the radar right now. There's things that you hear about. Certainly we're hearing about AI and the challenges, the fears, and they're absolutely valid. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, all this Web3, XR, all this stuff. New forms of governance, technology, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. A lot of it we're making up, though. It's not coming out of wisdom. It's coming out of, here's some new tools, let's try some things. And, but there's a growing number of technologists that have done deep work. And this deep work is informing what they're designing and what they're co-creating. Give you an example of something that I'm sure a place like Aurobindo will resonate with, is using forms of the blockchain that aren't cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but something new that actually values many forms of capital. Because problem with money and the problem with current cryptocurrency is it's tied to money. And there's all these other forms of capital that go unnoticed. They're not recorded in gross national product because they're not valued. But you know what? Man, are they valuable. And they're especially valuable right now. And so there are those that have this creative genius to know how to design and create these things, and they're doing it. And they're not doing it in isolation. They're beginning to find each other, and we're beginning to find them and work with them in creative ways where they can begin to explore it with design principles that they can incorporate into the framework, into the architecture, into the user experience, which is great because we're talking about something that doesn't need to be and should not be manipulative. A system that isn't being hijacked by big tech companies, which is what's happening right now. A system that has integrity, sovereignty, that you protect your own data, and more importantly, you control your own experience of what you see and what sees you and who you're interacting with. And this is of great hope because this is beginning to come together in a very tangible way. And very soon, we're going to be able to see it. I'm seeing it because I'm kind of at the forefront of a lot of these things that are happening there. And with the teams, the design teams, the engineering teams that are working on things like interoperability, which is how one system communicates with another. Because the essence of it, whether it's technology or economics or community, it comes down to relationship. It's human relationships. And so how can technology, which is a wonderful servant, but it's a tyrant of a master, and this is the concern with AI, is that it needs to be infused with a heart and with wisdom. The fortunate thing is that these things are underway. So it's like, the world's falling apart in many ways, but the reordering of it is right there to hold it when it falls. And another sign of the hope of the future is yesterday's sessions, filled with the divine feminine, blessing the tree and the earth in the morning, dance that just fed my soul, the wise discussions about Tantra and the importance of the divine feminine. This, I think, is going to be the telltale sign, is that when we see the divine feminine and the influence of it, certainly in women in positions of authority, but also with men that balance out masculine and feminine. It's not a gender thing, that, but it needs to be more widespread, and it will be. I had the good fortune of meditating today in the incredible room and felt an overwhelming presence of the divine feminine. Good thing, it's kind of the point, right? But having, that simple presence right here and available provides a beacon that allows us to begin to, kind of sense it and incarnate it and look for more of it in our life and in our world. So there are many others, but those are a few things that I personally am witnessing, and some of the people around me that I'm working with are witnessing as well.
So we don't have much time, but I would like to know if there is any specific questions anybody has for either of the two speakers. And have you got another mic? Or, yeah, thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for sharing about the technological aspects of cooperation. Is there anywhere where we can read up on things like Orwell and blockchain and interoperability and stuff?
There are. They haven't been centralized yet. But there's something at work. I'll just give you two things that are at work. There's this new platform, kind of substratum, that is about to go live. It's been 10 years in the making, and some of you may have heard of it, called the holochain. And the holochain's different than the blockchain. You know, the blockchain requires consensus everywhere in the chain, which is why it takes so darn much energy, because there has to be consensus in the ledger everywhere. Well, the holochain only needs consensus peer-to-peer. And so the groups and organizations and how they're using it, they develop their own rules of engagement between them. And they have to hold themselves to them. But and there's this other social network that is called Hilo, Hylo, Hilo. And Hilo was actually built years ago, 7, 8 years ago, for the holochain. But the holochain's taken this long to kind of come along. And the holochain, too, isn't going to be dependent upon the tech companies. It's not going to be dependent on server farms because they've got these hollow ports that people have. And so nobody owns it. It's free. The center is everywhere. The circumference is nowhere. And this would be a wonderful thing, an experiment for a place like Oroville. So those are just a couple things. And to specifically answer your question, there's going to be a lot that's going to come out about more of the details and kind of who's doing this. But it's important to have a good first impression to make sure that there's a solid connected base.
I have a HoloPod to give away. I was one of the first buyers of the thing, but it goes above my head. I'm not technical enough, and I couldn't connect it and stuff. So I own the device, and I spent about $500 for it. So whoever wants to have it can have it, and I send it to them. It's in Germany. It's too much for me.
Thank you so much, Professor Joysen. Now, in terms of your bringing Sri Aurobindo and Maslow together, but what are some of the fundamental challenges of transformations? Maslow, with all the potential, his hierarchy of needs is still hierarchizes. And it unfortunately creates a hierarchy of the lower and the higher. And similarly, in an evolutionary way, what kind of transformation we need to bring to Sri Aurobindo's thinking. My second query is about architecture and the new consciousness. In what way architecture can be a yoga? And secondly, how the created building would have a different kind of space-time configuration as this philosophy of time that you are representing. How can a created space have multiple layers of space and time? A new archaeology of time created in such a way that living in that space, one becomes inspired to be an embodiment of a different consciousness.
Yeah, I'll try. Okay, the first question, I think there has to be some good beginning, and that beginning happened with Abraham Maslow. Yeah, because Maslow is one of the transpersonal psychology, which is a new stream. It started with William James through Carl Gustav Jung and finally went to Maslow. So Maslow did a brilliant thing. What he did is He did not take the inner hierarchy of the mind. Instead, he took the external hierarchy of the needs to make it more legible and more discernible and more accessible by the common humanity, who understands the progression at the individual level. Until and unless we are satisfied with, in Hindi mein jo bolte hai, roti, kapra, makan, you cannot talk about a higher level of spirituality. If you don't have basic access to food, physiological security, shelter and hygiene, and the human development indicators, for example, spirituality is a far, far, far away dream. Even the moral levels look like a college level or a PhD level access. Yeah. So Maslow did a brilliant contribution there. Yeah. So the moment you bring in Sri Aurobindo, you open up the whole ladder, and you not only pin up the individual development, but you position individual development in the collective and in the macrocosm. Now that becomes very difficult for many of us to understand to begin with. So Maslow is actually a wonderful scientific start. It's not a problem. It's actually a solution to the beginning of understanding Aurobindo and hundreds of sages behind Aurobindo. Yeah, that's number one. Number two is that beautiful space that you're talking about, where I will go and Jeff will go and will change, has to be designed by another individual who is actually beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that architect has to be beautiful enough with that beautiful mind to design that beautiful building in which I go and become beautiful. So which is the chicken, which is the egg, is an eternal cycle of the problem. I was just referring this to Gaby. About 40 years back when I was a student, someone came from Connecticut. His name was Amos Rappaport, Professor Amos Rappaport. And he said the beauty of Indian architecture principle is that before you change the environment, you change yourself. And once you change the environment. And once you change the environment, others come to that environment, they become better human beings. And they design better human environments again. So it becomes a logical cycle of design and design emission. So we cannot take a reductionist slice at time t and say this is the starting point, this is the end point. So we inherit a lot of good buildings from the past, and I think we'll be having better buildings in the future, much better buildings in the future. The future is much more hopeful than the past buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, question for Dr. Joysen.
Yeah, the Auroville, the Matrimandir. Yeah, the Matrimandir is one of the most powerful examples of where all the isolated efforts of Indian Sthapatya, Vastu, Vidya were found in this building, a bit in Kailashnath temple in Ellora, a bit in Chidambaram temple in the south, and a bit in some other temple in the north. All of that, along with the distribution of the 12 energies in the equinoctial cycle of the sun, and the distribution of the inner orb of the four fundamental, and then the concentration of all the energy in the center, which is the centripetal of the four energies, which is you're going to that level transcending energy itself, and you're going to the primordial energy, the mother, the sacred, the supreme Adya Shakti, has been translated into architecture. I think such an attempt was never made before. Yeah, it's a supramental creation, and because it has the power to conceive everything in that and that in everything together. I mean, in the synthesis of a yoga, Sri Aurobindo says there's nothing finite in the supramental because it's constantly being built on the idea of everything in one and one in everything, which is in the Gita, Sarvabhutas Tatmanam Tatha Sarvabhutani Chatmani. So the two things, so you're seeing the seed in every tree, and in every seed you are seeing the tree. So you're seeing the backward and the forward together. That's a supramental. That's a supramental.
Excuse me?
Yeah, that is the whole of, yeah, that is the whole. Yeah, that is the holarchy. Yeah, so when we don't understand, exactly. So when we don't understand the holarchy, we decompose to hierarchy. And when we don't understand the hierarchy, we decompose to one level. When we don't even understand the level, even within the level, I have an argument with you. And you make one political party, I make the second. So when we roll back, we first operate at the level, we realize a level, then we see connections between level, then we begin to see the hierarchy, and then as we proceed, we see the whole hierarchy. So this is a change that is happening not externally, but internally. So you see the change that you like to see outside, it happens inside you. That's Gandhiji, that's Gandhi. So it happens outside, yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Sen, I was immensely impressed by your speech.
No, that's nothing.
And in fact, because I'm from a literature background,
Yeah.
the problem is when I go to characterize the planes of consciousness,
Yes.
overhead planes, starting from the higher, crossing the illumine, the intuition, and the overhead. The problem is we speak from a subjective level, we theorize from Sri Aurobindo's point of view. So can you suggest me as a person from science, can you suggest to me so that I can defend myself in my speeches?
That's the next Nobel Prize.
How to explain in terms of objectivity?
Yeah. That's a wonderfully tough question. Yeah. The suggestion. I think we have to begin somewhere. I mean, just the session before lunch, because everybody has certain impression and sanskars, but as humanity, we share the same vital, the same body, and the configurations are the same, but we have different memory chains. We have different memory chains. So, and the memory, yeah. Yes. So this, yeah. So what we have done, we have actually published all this in the form of a small thing. If you're interested, we'll send you the link. There's some YouTubes already put on the web. That's thanks to what Jeff was saying, the information technology, the www and everything. But the point is not to defend a truth, but the point is to become the truth and live the truth. Yeah. Because truth remains. I mean, you don't have to defend it. Only we move away from the truth, as we come down from the golden to the iron age. And at the end of the iron age, we again go back to the truth and we become truth itself. So it's science. It's like an entropy. You're dropping down and then you build up the system's energy. You go back to that same level. So it's basic physics. So mythologically, these 4 ages are nothing else but the energy levels of consciousness. Rolling down and rolling up, rolling down and rolling up. They're constantly happening, but it's very tough to understand them because we live in small corpuscles of time, and these are huge. There is something called the precession of the equinox. I'm sure many of you know. Apart from the rotation and the revolution, the Earth also has a 26,000 years rotational axis around the galactic north. And many people, many saints have said these probably are the 26,000 years cycles of the Iron Age returning back to the Golden Age. Now this is an area which is just getting, it's not yet proved. It's not yet proved, just getting proved, because when you feed the sutras of the Rig Veda, like the 7th mandala, to a Microsoft or a TIFR software, the software gives you dates like 8,700 BCE. That means the middle portion of the Rig Veda was composed about 10,700 years back. And the age of the Saptarishis, the 7 sages of the Angirashas, are from times immemorial. So a whole new chapter opens up. Today, archaeology at Pompuhar port, which is very close to Karaikulam, takes us to 10,000 BC. Archaeology in Sindhudurg, Konkan coast, takes us back to 12,000 BC. Deccan College is working on that. So you have hilltop petroglyphs, rock cut diagrams, which has been carbon dated and photoilluminated to about 10,000, 1200 BC. And in 12,000 BC, you have the evidence of solar diagrams with 2 solstices and 2 equinoxes, which means about 12,000 years back, Indians or whoever lived in this subcontinent had a perfect knowledge of heliocentrism. 12,000 years back, the people who, and there are evidence of maritime connections with Egypt also. 12,000 years back. So that's absolutely a new chapter of history, not the Darwinian only, but something more than the Darwinian. Something more than the Usher Lightfoot chronology of explaining history. Something more.
Can we have the last question, please, from Raghu?
Yeah, this is a question to Jeff. I was just triggered by what Professor Sen said. In Indian design, we have three core principles. One is usefulness, which is called bhogadyam, utility. Sukhadarshanam, which is aesthetics or efficiency, effectiveness, efficiency, and something called ramyam. Ramyam means spiritual delight. How is it possible for you to bring that element into design? Because Western building, none of it, Western design principles don't talk about Ramyam at all. It's not there. This is part of the Vastu Shastra. So how is it possible to bring that in? Because if you don't, it's going to go back into the same old stuff.
That is a very good question. And there is a growing body of designers and engineers that are open and receptive to new ways of doing things, and also open and receptive to willing to learn experientially, develop the level of being as well as the level of knowledge to be able to do that. In user design, they have two focal points, which is this useful? Is this usable? That's a good beginning, but it doesn't go far enough. So I would love to talk with you more about it and introduce you to some of these teams that are integrating lots of different frameworks and principles into what they're doing. One of the things that we're doing with them is exploring what the pro-social framework can add to Agile and Scrum when they begin to integrate cultural principles into design. So we need to have contemplative principles, deeply spiritual principles in there, because it'll revolutionize the technology that's being created. So let's talk about it, and I'll make contacts. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I think out of respect for the next people who are speaking, I shall wrap up. And I think really taking the important position of, meaningful connections, I think both speakers spoke about, and cooperation, and putting that into action. And I think this is what Professor Joy was saying is so important, working with the young people. They need to see the action happening. And if I may, I just finish with a quote from Fridtjof Capra. A sustainable human community must be designed in such a manner that its way of life, its business, its economy, physical structures, technologies, and social institutions do not interfere with nature's inherent ability to sustain life. So I'd like to leave you on that note, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And taking permission from the chair, we have the pleasure to, I'll request Jeslu. Yeah, the chair. Yeah, the chair is Sudha.
Here's the chair.
She's the chair of chairs, You give. I'll request Jeslu to kindly give. These are the two PowerPoints. The PowerPoint has been put to two publications. So there's a copy of that, one for Gaby and one for Jeff. Taking your permission, yeah. And we'll send you the link, yeah.
Thank you so much, Gaby, Jeff, Joy, Jeslu. I think in a way that was a very interesting presentation that in a way has brought and summed up our 3 days of immersive, where we started off what Aurobindo is, and the integration of different things that adds to the essence, the question that we're exploring of how do we come together individually and collectively for the human conscious awakening to be accelerated. Some fundamental questions asked, some churning happened, some reflections, and in a way this session gives hope that the vision that Mother many, many years ago had for Aurobindo and continues to inspire people to come. Fundamentally, there is something really good. I think it's come to a point where we can see what needs to happen for this acceleration to happen. So as a summation of this 3-day immersion, I'm going to now invite Sri Aurobindo Nilakantanji, the governing board member of Aurobindo Foundation, Dina Miriam, the chairperson of the International Advisory Council. Just to bring this to a close, and also your thoughts on what next and what from here, it would be really lovely to hear that. Thank you.
Let me bring the truth.
Actually, somebody's clear, no? Yeah. Okay. Right. People who are here who belong to the Tamil community, they would know from a particular, there is a movie called Thiruvilayadal, in which there is a very famous statement by one particular comical character. It's that, எனக்கு கேள்வி கேட்கத்தான் தெரியும் பதில் சொல்ல தெரியாது. Okay. I have been asking questions all the time. Now I have been made to talk. I'm not exactly an orator or speaker, so you will have to forgive the way I talk. Okay? And these 3 days have been really a great feast for the soul. And I thank the Foundation Office and the International Advisory Board people who have organized this. I will start with kind of my own certain experiences. When I was 14, I got, in the summer of 1985, I got typhoid. And to keep me in the bed, my mother supplied me with a lot of books. And one of those books was Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. So in the end of that summer, when I got cured of my typhoid, I was also got cured of the belief in a creator God. I became a thorough atheist. And fortunately for me, in my tradition, there was an anchoring point. There is this Trivasagam, which says, Pullahi Pudai Puluvai Maramagi, Palvirgamahi Paravayai Pambahi, Kallai Manidarai, Payai Ganangalai, Vallasurahi Munivarai, Tevarai, Chella, Ninda, Tavara Sangamatul, Ella Pirapum Prendalaithen, Emberman, Meye Punurial, continuity. In Tamil, that is in English very simply. I have gone through the entire phylogenetic tree of evolution, and now I have attained liberation because of my total surrender at the feet of the divine. So I had this anchorage point. At the same time, I had lost most of my faith. And I found, in a way, the Darwinian view of nature to be very elevating and satisfying. It is not survival of the fittest. I understood that very clearly. Survival of the fittest was not the words of Darwin. Later, people understood it as evolution as survival of the fittest. It is survival of the thing that adapts itself to the environment. There is an organic relation between the environment and the organism. And Darwinian natural selection is a process that is based on that organic relation. So, I was kind of, whenever I met people, spiritual people, they always had some kind of reservation about Darwinian, the so-called spiritual Darwinian evolution. Or evolution is general. In general, they had a kind of aversion. When I was 18 around, I came here. I bought this book called Whispers of Nature, which was published by Sri Aurobindo Foundation or whatever that particular organization. And it contained a beautiful part of Savitri. It says, it goes something like, if I remember from my memory, from the meaningless void, creation rose. If from the meaningless void, creation rose. If from bodiless folds matter was born, if life could climb the unconscious tree and its green delight break into emerald leaves, and the beauty of laughter blossom into flowers, And sense could awake in tissue, cell, and nerve, and thought could seize the gray matter, thought could seize the gray matter of the brain, and soul peep from the secrets of the flesh, then why not the unknown light fall upon man, and these unseen powers can arise from nature. I am telling it from memory, so there can be one of your words. But the point is, I understood that science can be sung, and it can be an elevating poetry. And that kind of made me at that time a Sri Aurobindonian, and I started reading Sri Aurobindo from that particular point of view, from that particular point. And I also at that time I was into studying into the parapsychology research, particularly most of the research that have been cited here in the last 2 days, from J.B. Ryan to Dean Radin, and from Uri Geller to the different, from which side of the fence you look at them, it is either charlatans or people who have attained great powers. But one can say that very clearly the entire parapsychology research of the West is predicated upon a false axiom. It is based on this Cartesian dualism of mind and the body. Okay. As against that, what Sri Aurobindo suggests, and in fact, Dr. Alok Pandey is to be here today and he couldn't come, and he had written a beautiful thing that the dark womb, this cosmic mystery of the light in the dark womb. And throughout matter, this particular consciousness has also been evolving, co-evolving with matter. So that is the Sri Aurobindonian point of view. That is basically the Indian philosophy also, the Hindu philosophy also. So when I will give you one example and I will move. Take the example of the phantom limb phenomenon. So in the phantom limb phenomenon, you know that the hand has been amputated, then you have the feeling that you have the hand. You may have a pain in that hand, but you can't do anything about it. There was this famous biologist turned parapsychologist, Rupert Sheldrake, and he suggested that this is a proof for the vital being, the mental being that exists apart from the physical being. But that could not bring any solution to the people who actually feel the pain in this phantom limb. Then there was V.S. Ramachandran, who was the famous neurobiologist, as you know. And he came up with another one reasoning for this phantom limb phenomenon. He said that the brain usually does this mapping. And our entire body is actually this mapping done by the brain. Our concept of body is the mapping done by the brain. And when suddenly the hand has been removed, the brain, what it does, it takes the part of the particular region of the brain that is connected to the hand, and it just remaps it to another part of the brain. In other words, it creates an illusion. That illusion makes you think that the particular phantom limb is existing. So he actually took a very Vedantic step. He thought, okay, I will remove this illusion with another illusion. So he created this mirror box, and all of you would have known about it. You put your hand inside and then you feel like you have another one hand, and then once you move this unamputated hand, the other hand also moves, the brain gets the feeling that the hand has moved, the pain, everything, the uncomfortable feeling, everything disappears. So here you see that how a Vedantic framework helps you to alleviate pain, to get a clear understanding, a deeper understanding of reality, better than the concept of a vital being, because this vital, physical, the difference, it comes from the Cartesian divide and also from the Aristotelian ghost in the machine concept of soul. So the last presentation we saw about Fricho Capra, and Fricho Capra has written a very beautiful book called The Web of Life. In that he quotes two particular scientists to describe what is life, and he says these scientists are Francisco Varela and Maturana, and they are from Brazil. Originally Marxists, then they later started doing Buddhist meditation, and their entire epistemology is based on Buddhist doctrines. And they say that life at its very basis is nothing but cognition. So even at the cellular level there is cognition. You don't need an entire mechanism of brain, everything. The pulsation of cognition is at the very basic level. That is what Kenopanishad says. Pradibodha Viditam, the very pulsation of cognition contains the entire consciousness. So this kind of adds dimensions to Darwinian evolution, and this has been taken up by Sri Aurobindo. This has been talked about by Sri Aurobindo already, and we also talked about, for example, Maslow and Sri Aurobindo. They lost this. There is a very important thing Maslow had written about, which is not part of this hierarchy of needs. He talked about something called peak experience. Peak experience is when you just get this experience where you can bless the entire universe. You feel an abundance of the universe arising in you, and or in that moment, you can bless the entire universe. And people have got this peak experience in the most unlikely of the places. For example, Maslow told his students whether you have experienced this peak experience. One of the examples I will give you, and that will give you an idea. A mother, she was having a feast of people coming to her house, and all the guests have left, and she was cleaning the leftover kitchen utensils, everything. At that moment, suddenly, she felt that she was one with the universe. Suddenly, because she was doing something beautiful for all the different people, strangers. She felt this, and she felt one with the universe. She felt that she could bless the entire universe. And then, this was a letter written by Maslow to an author called Colin Wilson, who wrote the book Outsider. And then he says, Maslow, Colin Wilson comments on this and says, most of the romantic poets had this peak experience, and their poetry came from this. But then, suddenly, everything again went black and white. All the color was lost. And they couldn't just stand this loss. So most of these romantic poets, if you go through their works, they committed suicide. But this had not happened in India. So in Outsider, he actually gives the example of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Now we come to Auroville. Here we are experimenting something beautiful. As we know, evolution from lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, we move to biosphere. And from biosphere, we move to something called noosphere. Noosphere was the term coined by Teilhard de Chardin, about whom K.D. Setna had written a very beautiful book comparing Teilhard de Chardin's vision with that of Sri Aurobindo. And you should actually read it. It's really beautiful. And in fact, the views of Teilhard de Chardin and Sri Aurobindo resonate very much. He coined this term noosphere. And this was popularized by a Russian geochemist called Vernadsky, and who was actually the person who gave the prototype for the later Gaia theory. So here, what we are doing is, from the noosphere, we are trying to create the Devasphere. So we are actually here at the forefront of evolution. But why this has come here to Pondicherry? Why it has been placed in a place like Tamil Nadu in South India? Because here the Vedic tradition is still alive. Here the Vedic tradition is still resonating with the energy. Sri Aurobindo very clearly, and this Dr. Alok Pandey has written beautifully from 1912, what Sri Aurobindo had said. He says very clearly that the mission of Sri Aurobindo and also the mission of Mother was actually, though he met her later, it was actually to restate Sanatana Dharma in all its beauty, in all its deepest meaning for the coming generations. And for that, we are creating this. In fact, Savitri, as Dr. Alok Pandey says in his book, is the combination of all the Vedic wisdom, is the combination of the Tantra, it is combination of the mantra, it is combination of yoga. And Savitri solidified we should consider Auroville as Savitri solidified in the form of kind of emanation in the material realm. So this 3-day conferences, the talks that have been given, the different perspectives that have been given to us. In fact, the essence of this land is what is called theodiversity. We need diversity. And this theodiversity is the basis of this land, and it defines this land. This theodiversity leads us towards a unity that is not homogenization. And we are trying to create a model, absorbing. It is like a plant placed here. In 3 minutes, I will finish this. There is an ancient verse in Tamil literature called Paribadal. They explain about a city. And the city is Mayun Kuppul Malanda Tamarai. Essentially, it is the lotus that sprang from the navel of Lord Vishnu. That is how the city is. And the different streets in the city are the petals of the city. And the in the center there is, at the receptacle, there is the temple for the divine. And the people there are like the pollens. And those who come from outside to enrich themselves from this pollen are like the bees who are coming there. Okay. I used to think that this is just poetic hyperbole. There was a polymath called Patrick Geddes who came here. He studied the different temple architectures, the beginning of 20th century when colonization was taking over. And he almost repeats independently what has been said in this Paribadal poetry that is some 2000 years ago. This is very striking. And now this is re-emerging in the form of Aurobindo. This is a sapling that has been planted here, the Matru Mandir and the whole thing. What needs to be done is we have to preserve its roots so that the roots can go out in the surrounding areas and derive the spiritual nourishment from the culture that is existing around. That is why it has been placed here, because this is the fertile soil. And then it will flower when a lot of birds will come and sit in its branches. And thank you very much for organizing this, madam, and the foundation office, and all the people who have contributed. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Well, we now come to the conclusion, and in a way that's always the hardest part. I don't have a lot to say because so much has been said. I think everything that needs to be said has already been said, except to express gratitude. Gratitude to the governing board, who really gave their blessing for this summit to take place. Gratitude to the secretary of the foundation, Janti Ravi, who's here, for giving her blessing and for putting in place the mechanism to allow this to happen. Most especially to Sudha. Where is Sudha? Here she is. It would not have happened without her. And all the people on her team, the invisible people who I can't name, who supported her in making this happen. And to Marianne, who I don't think is here. Marianne, please stand up. Marianne's main concern is to make sure everybody arrived here and gets home safely. And she spends a lot of nights worrying about this and thinking about this. So she wants everyone to feel well cared for. I want to thank Luca and Manoj, the team that was part of the thinking team, because this took a lot of effort to pull this together. It really did. And we've worked for many months. I want to thank all the people who came from far away and from other parts of India to be part of this. For those who came to listen, to Krishnadas, who just left, who really, I think, brought out the heart energy. And we have to continually work to balance the mind and the heart. Sometimes I think we get so much into the mental that we sort of leave the heart behind. And it's constantly, I have to be mindful to make sure we bring that bhakti, that heart energy, into our space. So the hardest part for this moment is that we're going to be all leaving and going home. Some of us live here, but we formed tight bonds and connections, and we know that this is not an end but a beginning. The conversations have not finished because at this moment, and I think Jeff summed it up so beautifully, we are at the frontier of many changes. And the changes, that gives us opportunities, but also present deep challenges for humanity. Challenges which we need to gather all the spiritual resources to address, and that could only be addressed in a collaborative way. And I think that is one of the key messages going forward, is the need for collaboration and the need to draw upon our spiritual resources for humanity to take the next step in our awakening evolution. We need to all be drawing upon our spiritual resource. I find myself saying to people, you want to solve climate change? Meditate. You want to solve the environmental challenge? Meditate. You want to end conflict? Meditate. The more people who meditate, the more peaceful we'll be as a human society. It's really come down to a very simple formula. So we all have a role to play in that. The more we can tap into our inner resources, the more we're going to affect the collective. I mean, there were so many themes we touched upon in these few days that we could only have an hour to discuss. But this idea of the individual and the collective, how does our meditation affect the collective? I mean, this is something that I think about a lot, because then you assume a great responsibility. If your spiritual consciousness is affecting the collective, I mean, yesterday I spoke, I don't know how many of you heard me, I spoke about the anger that I felt that I was walking around with when I remembered the destruction of the Kashi Vishwanath temple. Well, I was adding a negative energy to the collective, and I wanted to get out of it. I didn't want to remain in that space. And so, fortunately, Divine Grace enabled me to release it, lifted that pain from my heart. But we're all feeling all the pain. I mean, the pain of what's happening in Ukraine, the pain of what happened in Turkey and Syria. We had another mass killing in the U.S. yesterday at a university. I mean, this is a collective pain that humanity is having to endure. What's the answer? Meditation and an opening of the heart. I mean, I feel sometimes we can't look away. We can't look away from the pain. It's a matter of sort of witnessing it and being able to send out our love, even from where we're sitting on our meditation cushion. If that's all we can do is offer, and I think I would like to ask, Bhante, can you do it to offer the merit of this gathering to the benefit of the world and to all those who are suffering right now? Because there's a lot of suffering going on. There's a beautiful Buddhist practice, and I think it's a practice in the Vedic tradition too, at the end of any kind of effort to offer the merit from the effort to all sentient beings. And so
Dana, if I can just borrow a second, I did want to put a face to the team. So this is Chitra. This is Kanananna. That's Purnyaka, who 3 days and more have been at it. And without them, sometimes things are really difficult to get through. So I really want you to bless them. And I really want you to give your heartfelt gratitude, who really work. And sometimes they don't want anything for them. So I want to also thank Arun, who has been our silent administrator at the back end. And I want to thank Jaya and Shivaya for supporting and giving the space for the summit to really happen. And thank you for your continued presence and inspiration. So Jaya, Shivaya, could you please stand up? Thank you so much for truly creating Unity Pavilion where we could have this. So, sorry, I felt that they needed to be here to receive this love and all your blessings and gratitude. They, from the Global G20 Summit to now, and then there is Aurobindo Festival, they've just been at it. Yeah, it's a beginning, but yes, your love is something holds them as well. You know, sometimes that's important. So thank you so much.
I also want to thank the people who provided us food.
Yes. So this is thanks to Jayanti. She, like her usual style, drops a googly at the end and then says, let's make it happen. And I think it was not even 3 days before when she says, why don't we get our units to serve lunch? And I'm like, huh? unit, serve lunch, 150 people? No, 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 I'm happy with serving. But she said, no, we have to. And this is, thank you for that effort because, you know, what I got present to is the generosity of these people who served this food. So each lunch has been an offering from them. So the first day was solitude, which conceptualizes growing their own produce, bringing to the table, and they served 150. Okay, sorry, I've been instructed to go there. Second day we had combination was of sushi and lasagna. Today we had Annam Kitchen, who served us a typical South Indian lunch. So truly, when I'm saying there's a lot of forces, I didn't know whether I would pull it off. I didn't know whether I would be able to arrange lunch on time and get things done. But it's just amazing of how I have been present to this last 3 days, how grace just works. And anytime and every time, it's just been present. And silent help coming all the way. So yes, body-wise, we all come. But what I got present to is what we talk about, the collective really working and the unseen collective. So thank you for allowing this opportunity to happen. I also want to thank Marco. I call him as Red. Because I was finding it difficult to tell his name. So he said, okay, you have the permission to call me Red. And then, of course, Jules, a special thanks to him. And I don't know your name, but it's a team that has been constantly trying to, bring this live and record it. And always for us to go back to that these are conversations that have happened, as familiar, and where do we go on from here? Many, many people, of course, the speakers who at the drop of the hat said yes. In fact, we have Dolores who came all the way. She was supposed to be one of our speakers and, she couldn't be here, but the fact that she had to be here and she came here on day 3 of the summit, that's what it takes to make it happen. So huge gratitude and go down to each one of you. I said Marco, Jules, that's Red. That's Red for me because I said I can't say his name. And there is Stefano who was here in the morning, so acknowledging his silent presence and all the people who came in and went. Okay, the names can go on and on and on, so I'm going to stop here.
All the hidden hands. We're grateful for
Yeah, I mean, if I have to go like that, the transport, Vera and his team who have been at the back in the call, for the airlines who was there, for the trains, for the monks who have come here for the first time and who made it a celebration all the time. I mean, the list is endless. And I think that's what it is, just in gratitude and allow this gratitude to flow. So I'm just going to invite, like what Dana said before I interrupted her, if I can call, like he was kind enough to give me this permission, I can call him Bante. If he could come and...
Bante. Come and offer the merit.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Please. You can be.
I also want to thank Raghu and the team, Leila and Noah.
Yeah, they're all included in that.
who led sessions on Friday and Saturday. That was also part of. Go ahead.
We want to specially thank Dana. Let's put our hands together.
She's.
I'm eternally grateful to Allville Foundation, Dina, to invite me here for the first time to share my understanding of meditation. It has been wonderful to be part of this awakening. Yes, so also thank you for inviting me to share merits. The Pali word for merit is punya. I think the same you have in the Indian tradition. I don't know who borrowed from who, but the Buddha, I think, since he was here. So it's part of our practice when we do something good, something meritorious, Another interesting word, which is also very close to what we call merits, is actually happiness, really happiness. So we've done a lot of good things by participating in deliberation in this conference that is going to transform the society. We have planted the banyan seed. Banyan or banyan? I don't know. Banyan. So the seed we have planted, and you see, he planted the seed. She planted the seed. So that's why we're here even after 150 years. We don't know how many people are going to be here. So anyway, for me, I look at merits as a light. When you light a candle and you share that light, it becomes even brighter. And in Buddhism, when we share these merits, we share even with our ancestors, all people who passed away, all people who have passed through this land. We are sitting on a bubble of energy. How many people have been here all these years, So really, we share merits to all the people of the past, the present, and the future. And that even makes merits very big. If you add the past and present and the future, it makes such a huge merit. So I'm going to do it in Pali language, which means that we share these merits with all beings, all sentient beings, wherever they are. They may be happy, they may be peaceful, and all that. So I'm going to do it in Pali language. Just sit comfortably. You can even close your eyes. It's a meditation itself because it's about sharing gratitude, Yeah, for all our effort, all our energy that has brought us to here. So let us just sit for just a few seconds. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Akasata chabummata deva naga mahidika punyatam anmoditva chiram lakanto lokasasana. Akasata chabummata deva naga mahidika punyatam anmoditva chiram lakanto desana. Akasata chabummata deva naga mahidika punyatam anmoditva chiramuraka tumam parang etawata chakamehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya sabbe buddha barapata paceka nanchayambaram Arahantanancha tejena rakam bandami sabbaso sabbe buddha barapata pachekanancha yambaram Arahantanancha tejena rakam bandami sabbaso sabbe buddha barapata pachekanancha yambaram Arahantanancha tejena rakam bandami sabbaso. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu means well done, excellent, or like that. That's what it means. So, well done. Till we meet. Thank you very much.
To be continued.
Thank you so much. Can I just invite all the speakers onto the stage? Madhu, Raghu, Jeff, the monks. Martin, Manoj, Nilesh, Aishwarya, Marian, We just want to come together. Shraddhalu, thank you for coming. I'm just trying to see. Yeah, that's Arvindanji, Gautam, Marian. Gustavo. Yeah, I forgot to mention Gustavo. Where were you hiding? Thank you for being the photographer. Please give him a hand too. And of course, Jayanti. So, of course, we need to have the mandatory physical presence presentation or a photograph. So, if we could all sneak in, squeeze in, faces shown, and if you could, from your heart, Layla just stepped out, so we're missing her. But if you could open your heart with love to these people who came here and continue in their own respective spaces to be the beacon of inspiration. Huh? Ah, yes. Please. They are all included. Come. I'll come. Please. Am I missing anyone else? Yeah. I think he's bringing Kishori Ma for that. Yeah. Okay, so Gustavo, are they in one frame? No, I'll come first. Luca, please join. You came in to take the final gratitude, the bow, in silence. Hmm? Nothing, it's just a group photograph, just a small memento. Kishori ma'am also has come. Can you bring her? Yeah. She'll come. If you can look at that side. Ah, thanks, Devin, for joining in. Okay. If I'm missing anyone, please lift yourself up, walk up, and come to the stage. Okay, so people who are remaining here, as I said, just open your hearts to really offer your love, big love, and please receive this love from Auroville, from Aurovillians and beyond, and to everyone here. Thank you for really being here with your energy, with your presence, sharing your gifts, and truly all the different lens and perspective, and for a humanity that we all are here born for. So thank you so much, and grateful. Till we meet again. Thank you so much. So Tantu's at auto mode. 7. Yeah.